Welcome back. In this episode, we're going to look at scoping our CSS as we further separate our app into subdomains. We're going to start where we left off in the last episode. If you need to catch up, check out Theming CSS. So we're working through our exercise and splitting an app by domain. We want to add a kind of theming to these individual sites, providing a way to separate the look and feel of an individual blog without affecting the others. To do that, we have to decide where we want our CSS to live. At least in the case of themes, we're going to pull in our CSS by folders named after our domains. In our terminal, let's make some new folders. We'll cd into source CSS, and we'll make two dirs, link and Zelda. Now let's touch link theme CSS and Zelda theme CSS. So now let's turn to our article. Pretty shallow right now. So let's start from our about.js. So let's copy all of it and paste it in. For right now, we're going to leave it exactly as is, but we're going to add a dynamic import. We'll use the backticks. We'll go into CSS. Then we'll use prop sites and say theme CSS. So pointing to the files we just set up. So now let's update the routes so we can get our site into the props. Again, we can just copy the about. We're going to update the path to article, and we're going to add a parameter slug. The static context comes in the same way, but now alongside the static context we have the variable match, which is also coming from our static router. Match has a number of parameters on it, including slug. So let's hand match to our universal component. We'll say match equals match. Now finally, instead of the about page, we're going to render article. Alright, looking pretty good so far. So let's run dev and see where we're at. Let's say article post. It seems to come through okay. So you can see we have the link and the Zelda theme emitted, but they're emitted as JS files. So if you go to dev client, you can see why. It's because we're using the style loader here. Instead of the style loader, we want to use the new kind of loader. So let's set up our themes and we'll get that working. Let's go to main CSS. We'll take out the background color. Theme CSS. Body, background color. And we'll give it this background color. You can give it whichever background color you'd like. We'll go into Zelda, and we'll paste the same thing. We'll update the background color a bit. So if you go to server render, you can always put a link tag right here and point to it. But we're going to do something a little cooler than that. We're going to take this flush chunk names and we're going to add to it. So if you look right here in flush chunk names, the flush chunk names is just an array. In the current iteration, it has no chunks to output. So let's change that. Let's npm install the mini CSS extract plugin. Now I've introduced this plugin before. Its only limitation at the moment is that it doesn't support hot module reloading. But we're going to work on theming right now, so we want it to extract the individual CSS chunks. So inside of our dev client, let's import that. Inside of our style loader, let's comment this out, and we'll use mini CSS extract plugin loader in the CSS loader. Finally, we'll add it to our plugins. So let's rerun dev. The compilation took a little longer because it had to create these source maps, as well as the actual files we're looking for. So now let's rerun it. So you can see that article.js has been pulled down. There's no article CSS, because in our article.js file, we're importing about CSS. So let's switch to article CSS. And now we have article CSS coming in instead of about CSS. And you can see that here, article CSS and article.js. So let's take that debugger out of our render. And now we want to add another chunk, the theme chunk, to our list of chunks. So we need this site variable. So let's move site up here. Next, let's add a new array to the flush chunk names array. I'm going to say concat empty array. And then inside, I'll say CSS slash site theme CSS. Alright, now when we reload, we see the background is green. We can also see the link theme is being pulled in. We have a JavaScript file, we have our CSS file. The JavaScript file seems a little superfluous. So what about Zelda? She has a nice blue background, but it's also all out of whack because we're using the article CSS instead of the about CSS to style this page. And you can see there's nothing much here. So let's take our about CSS and move it into article CSS for now. Alright, we're back to where we started, but now with cool theming background colors. So now when we change our article page in the next episode, we're going to use these colors and effect more overrides using our theme. You'll also notice because we appended it onto the end, it's always going to appear after our main CSS, so it'll override things properly. Alright, in this episode, we hooked a new style sheet into the mix for theming purposes. We implemented a dynamic import to implement our theme CSS using the site prop.
Now I'll be the first to admit that one CSS file, far from a theme, does it make. Theming is a much larger topic, but what I wanted to introduce with this is integrating this site prop into your render on both the client and the server side to affect the style in some way. I do want to talk about theming and skinning more in future episodes.
If you need the final code, git checkout theming CSS final. Next, we're going to build out the article page for our heroes. So we have 2 examples of fully working posts. See you in the next episode.